Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidate interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Joy Cardine, and I'd like to introduce T.J. Mertz, running for Madison Metropolitan School Board, Seat 5. As we begin, I'd like to give you an opportunity for an opening statement as to your educational, vocational, and civic experience that you have, which qualifies you for this office, and why you are running for the Madison Metropolitan School Board.
Thank you for the opportunity. I believe that schools and public schools are the best way we can build a better future. At an early age, I participated in the desegregation of schools in Evanston, Illinois, and experienced the power of schools to transform individual lives, but also to transform communities. And drawing on that experience, as I became an adult, I studied and did postgraduate work in history and history of education, and also come from a tradition of community activism, and believe that we have an obligation to give back to our community. With my knowledge and skills and commitment to public education, the school board and activism around education were the places where I felt I could contribute best. I became involved in a number of community organizations, community and schools together, working on referenda in state organizations such as the Wisconsin Alliance for Excellent Schools, working on full funding for our schools, and eventually ran for school board. I've served on the school board for almost 6 years now, and I've brought there not only my knowledge and skills and passion and commitment, but I've also learned on the school board. And I think that the 6 years of experience have taught me very well what the district is doing well and what the district needs to work on. And I think we're at a place now where we've made some progress and some things have improved, but in order to take it to the next step, we have to address some issues of trust and community building.
The achievement gap between white students and students of color is a chronic problem that MMSD has struggled with for a long time. What of the superintendent's priorities for narrowing the gap do you support, and what do you believe should be the board's priorities?
I think the board's priorities and the superintendent's priorities should coincide on bringing our community's voices into the problems and bringing our staff to the fore with it. We need to bring the whole community together. We need to explore our differences, but we also need to find our common ground, and our common ground is that we want the best for all of our children. I think that part of this involves the knowledge and viewpoints of our community, but much of it also involves enhancing the opportunities of our frontline staff, our classroom staff, to address the problems that are before them every day. We can look at things in the abstract and talk about gaps in opportunity and gaps in achievement, but it is the teachers in our classrooms who know the needs of their students best. And so I think that in order to make further progress, we need to listen to their voices, and we need to find ways for them to participate more fully in decision-making at all levels of the district.
A personalized pathways program is being implemented and promoted in the MMSD as one way to open educational opportunities for students of color and to help close the achievement gap. What do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the program as it is currently structured?
I think the strengths are that what we've heard from feedback from parents very strongly and from our staff is that it allows for collaborative work among the staff in doing cross-disciplinary things. We have cohorts which work very well for students in building the communities and getting to know each other and getting to know their teachers in more rich ways. And so we've seen those as being very, very positive aspects. Those aren't necessarily tied to Pathways, but Pathways has expanded those in our schools. I think the weaknesses are that, number one, it's not for everybody. That there are students who thrive in a traditional school, and that there are students who, and the Pathways inevitably will narrow the choices for other classes, the flexibility students have, and what we've seen that students have to make hard choices if they're in Avid and Pathways and they want to take multiple foreign languages, or they want to participate in a CNA program. that they've had to make difficult choices. And some of our richest courses are electives that both in the arts but also in core academic areas. And inevitably those choices will narrow if Pathways expands to wall pathways. So I think that and the final thing I think on weaknesses is that I think that we're moving too fast. We've seen some very, very initial positive and some kind of questionable results from the first year, but I think it's much too early to say that this has been a success or a failure. So I think that the expansion has been too fast.
Staff use of racial slurs has recently emerged as a significant personnel issue in the Madison schools. How should this issue be addressed throughout the district?
I think some of the things we're doing with professional development, what at one time were called courageous conversations, and building awareness and communication around differences and hate speech and related things are very important and need to continue and need to target better. I think that also that we need to understand that there needs to be due process in these cases, and I think that in some ways that hasn't happened. And I think that our commitment to restorative justice needs to also be expanded to this area. The instances vary greatly. The public reports and the rumors sometimes don't match the reality. There's no excuse for using these in those contexts. I also would have to add that when we say that there is no context when these words can exist in our schools, I think of all the rich music and literature and things that that closes us off to. We can't read James Baldwin, we can't listen to Cy Stone, we can't teach hip hop if this word has no place in our district. So I think that we have to take perhaps a more sophisticated approach to it, but there's no, that condemning the use of that language as in how it has been used in some instances has been, and opening up the conversation has been good, but I think we need to approach it with a little more complexity.
School safety is a hot button issue across the country. How do you look at the issue of school safety, and what is the school board's role in addressing it?
Two very good questions. I think school safety begins with trusting relationships and knowledge of students and supporting their social, emotional, and mental health needs, having them have a sense of belonging, and all those are the most important things for school safety. In recent years, we've made tremendous investments in our entranceways to make them more visible, in cameras, in buzzer systems, and things like that. Recently, we also made a close to $7 million investment, or we will be making in the course of the next year. We committed to it in new door locks, electronic door locks, and I think that was. I think that new door locks, in many places, was justified, but there was a $2 or $3 million or $4 million version of that I tried to get through the board. I tried to change that, and I failed in doing it. I think an overinvestment in hardening our schools when we have budget issues and we have people whose taxes are being taxed out of their homes and things, I think it was an overinvestment. Beyond that, when we talk about safety in terms of emotional safety, we've been working with the behavior education plan and physical safety for coming up on 4.5 years now, and we've made tremendous investments in that, but we still don't have it right. And I think in the day-to-day sense that continuing to work on that and continuing to evaluate what we're doing well and what we aren't doing well is important. Last, I'll add that I think that the investments in our behavioral and mental health partnerships have been very, very positive. And we've been the board, myself and others, have been pushing to expand those at a more rapid pace than currently is going on.
What do you identify as the biggest budget issues for the school district in 2019? And going forward, how do you propose the board address them? 2019
budget won't be too bad. 2020, 2021, have some real gaps that will occur. And one of the reasons I'm running again is because I think my experience working on school budgets for the last 5 years as we come to those difficult choices is very important to know what's worked and what hasn't, to know where programs have been added that we need to take another look at. One of our biggest one will be with employee compensation and how we deal with cost of living raises. And I think that a base wage cost of living rate to just have people keep pace with inflation, in addition to the other other compensations that they've earned either through longevity or through acquiring greater credentials. I think that's important. I think that we need to do some strong program evaluation and stop some of the things that aren't working. Phase out programs that we've invested in. And some of them have worked, and we should be expanding those. But there's others where the results have not been terribly cost effective. And so I think we have to look at that. I think we also have to look at, we've expanded greatly positions called non-union professionals who are someplace, and we've doubled them in the last 5 years. I think we have to look at the work that those people are doing and see how crucial it is to our schools. I think we need to invest in the classrooms. And everything that's further from the classroom, we need to look at with great scrutiny.
How do you envision keeping up with multiple constituencies, including students, parents, teachers, administrators, and the taxpayers who are not a part of these other groups, but to whom you must answer?
I've tried to be very accessible, and I've got 5 years of experience in doing this. I'm very, very proud of the communications that I get on a very regular basis, particularly those from our classroom staff. I have trusting relationships with them. They will call. It seems like that 4:30 is the phone starts ringing off the hook with particularly classroom staff, but also been very open to parents. Things like changing middle school start times was something I worked with parent and community groups with. Things like special education funding and staffing is something that I've worked widely with parents and students with. I spent a day, an afternoon at Simpson Street Free Press recently, and talking with those students was just great.
What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
I'd like to build on the last question and say that I think that we need greater involvement, we need greater openness in how we run our schools. At every level, we need to bring in people for shared decision making, and I'm committed to that, and I hope I have your support in that effort.
Well, I want to thank TJ Mertz for speaking with us and the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. As with every election, please vote. On behalf of the Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.